This is a video we ourselves have been waiting for a while. The next Paperwhite. Not counting the 16GB Agave, no, the next actual Paperwhite. Now, neither of these have any specifications to the degree of processors and RAM that we can conclusively get a hold of, so we're not really going to look at any of that. Also, the home screens are basically similar to each other in every physical capacity, so we're not going to look at that either, and we've already done reviews on this, the brand new one, easily identifiable by its jade color. Yes, there are other colors to choose from as well, and the previous Gen 11 in standard black. These are both the 32GB. They are both the signature editions. We're not even going to look at functionality in terms of what they can do because, again, they are skinned identically to each other. What we are going to look at is close-ups of the screen, the glow lights, the dark mode, and then speed tests. Reason being, doesn't matter where you go, everything is identical to each other. So with that, let's start. Looking at them side by side, we will continue to have, of course, the latest generation 2024 on the right. Now, right out of the gates, let's check the glow light situation to make sure we are completely even playing field. Now, the first thing that jumps out is this white space, and it is whiter on the previous generation. You'll see that it is just a kind of stone gray because, unfortunately, despite what they say, no, the actual whiteness of the box art will never be what you actually get. So it's not a matter of false advertisement, but it's definitely just never going to look like that. But that aside, here is the 2024 model. It does look a little bit tinged with yellow, not by a great degree. It is not 100% night and day difference between the two, but if you look at them side by side, you will see that this one is more yellow, not significantly more yellow, but it does appear to be that way with a long look with the naked eye. It does come out that it's on the warmer spectrum of color, whereas this one is cooler. However, with dark mode on, glow lights off, the new version actually looks better. This one looks more fuzzy. Look at where it says chapter. It's more blurry and fuzzy and washed out. Also, the background is a little bit more speckled with these little tiny dots. So again, this is the last generation, 2011, and it does not look as black as the current generation. This one is more black on white or white on black. It's more crisp and full and filled in. It almost looks like there's no gaps between the individual little pixels. It's like you just poured a whole bucket full of paint on it. It's absolutely flawless where you see the black dead space, whereas the previous gen looks completely inconsistent. And although the whites may look better on this in dead space, the darks and the black contrast are completely nicer on the later generation. But the combination of dead space versus characters in either capacity, even if you swap it back to light mode, just looks more fuzzy on the previous gen and looks more rounded off, and the lines between the two colors are more concise. And it does seem that the current generation is far quicker. It's getting there every single time quicker. This one almost takes a beat. Swipe, takes a beat, and then moves. This one's just instant. You can't contest that this is a more instant result of you swiping. This one is far slower. Now again, we're splitting hairs. Does that mean you're gonna say, oh, this is the best thing ever and this is complete trash, let's throw it in the garbage? No, because that's not the case here. This is perfectly fine, but pitting these up against each other, it is evident that when you do swipe, it is absolutely the sudden movement of whenever you do it. But this one takes significantly more time. Is that going to break immersion? No, not by a long shot. You see, this one goes more of a full refresh dither, the way it pixelates out and comes back, and that's not a page turn animation implementation. That's just what happens. You see it's an inconsistent. See, there's some pixelation in the bottom, but the top seems to be, depending on the page, just kind of better than the others. But this one is just more flawless. There's less happening and there's less that needs to happen. And it's so much quicker even at any amount of demand you put on the unit itself. Does that translate away outside of books? We're just going to look at that now as we navigate around. We're going to click on some things, both at the same time, each one. That one took way longer. And granted, you must note that the previous generation is older now, so you have to account for the fact that this has existed longer. And yes, electronic devices, much like anything, get tired over time. The batteries work poorly. The PCBs, the printed circuit boards, start to degrade, and that is just a result of planned obsolescence in our industry and most electronic industries in general. Now, we are noticing that anything you do on the new one is quicker, and that's kind of good. I mean, it should be that. If there were no speed upgrades, them calling it the fastest Kindle ever wouldn't hold much weight. Now, one thing we notice is these carousels on the previous gen really do struggle to move along, but this one is almost like you're using it on a faux A2 mode, although you're not, because there's no controllable A2 mode. But just swiping them, you'll see that there's more of an instant gratification on the new one here, whereas this one actually took so many steps to get done, it actually counted one of my clicks as a decision click when it was not. Now for the glow lights. If we turn up the brightness all the way, although this one was whiter in its base state, and this one was more yellow in its base state, they've kind of flipped qualities in a way. This one's still more on the warmer side, but this one became crazy blue. And that's some blue purple kind of light coming out. That's like a 12,000 degree Kelvin purple performance car HID. You can mitigate that with the warmth as well as you see here. But even if you go 1 or 2, you're starting to match that, but not quite. You're just kind of off on the color wheel. It's just not quite getting there. And on the flip side, when you go into the full warm light, this one looks darker by a few notes, and this one just seems more bright. Now, there's no real inconsistencies with the light. They are side to side, edge to edge, top to bottom. That's all well and good. There doesn't seem to be any shortcomings of the previous version. It just seems that the max brightness and the overall whiteness of the base mode with brightness up seems to be better on this unit, as it gives you more of a true Paperwhite feel with the glow light on, whereas the previous gen gives you a Paperwhite feel with the glow light off, as it has less of a yellow tinge. The Kindle 12th gen is bigger, but as we touched on in our review, you do not need to worry if you have one of the charging pads, because whether you have the previous generation, it fits perfectly fine, and because it's only a little bit bigger on this unit, it fits perfectly fine as well as the receptors and transmitters for the wireless charging are in roughly the same vicinity on the back, so it will work. Outside of that, these guys are not too different. There's some waterproofing on this, there's some recyclable materials on this, but really when it comes down to it, if you're just a fair weather e-reader fan and you say, you know what, I need an e-reader, this is on sale as a refurbished, absolutely no problem. There's no problem in that whatsoever. But if you ask us to split hairs and be overly critical, these are the differences between the two. Is it enough of a generational gap to warrant an upgrade? We have kind of deemed it to be so. I do believe this is enough, finally, to be warranted an upgrade. The Matcha Kindle with its kind of cheap re-release 2 years later, changing nothing, that was a little bit of a mess, but this one comes in some nice colors. It is made with more ecologically conscious materials. It just has overall a better feel to it, all things considered. The only really downside is something that we've noticed that our users have pointed out, that Reddit pointed out, is that yes, it is just a touch yellow. If you're staring at them together, if you remove this from the equation and you just look at this one, you're not really seeing that because you have no basis of comparison. You have no parallels to draw. But it is only when you put the previous gen into it, you say, oh, I see. But you're never really going to have these two at the same time. Because why would you? There's no reason for that. And going from this to this, it's not like you're looking at something that has blue light cut on it. That's not the case. It's just the screen material is different. These are the two differences between the 11th generation Paperwhite called the Paperwhite 5, and the current Paperwhite. I don't think anyone's calling this the Paperwhite 6, so we're not going to call it that because it is just the all-new Kindle Paperwhite 12th generation.